Welcome back to the deep dive. This time we're going to take a look at Kylie Jenner, and I'm not just talking about like the reality star, but like how she became such a force in fashion. So we've got this really insightful profile from Harper's Bazaar that goes way beyond those like perfectly filtered Instagram photos.
Yeah, it really does. It paints this picture of someone who went from being known for like lip kits and reality TV drama to like sitting front row at Paris Couture Week.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so for anyone who needs a refresher, Couture Week it's like where designers unveil these like incredible handmade, one-of-a-kind pieces. It's like the ultimate fashion fantasy land.
Yeah.
And Kylie's not just like there to watch. She's become a major player.
Absolutely. The article talks about her wearing these like stunning looks from Schiaparelli and Jean-Paul Gaultier. And it even quotes her saying like, I can't ever go back now when talking about the world of couture. She's totally hooked.
I mean, who wouldn't be? But what really struck me was how she talks about growing up entirely in the public eye. Like, imagine never having that, like, before picture, that sense of normalcy outside the spotlight.
It's hard to even fathom. She describes it as being like water for a fish. Fame is just the environment she's always known.
Right. Which makes her evolution all the more fascinating, right? Especially in the fashion world.
Yeah.
She didn't just embrace couture. She launched her own clothing line, Kai.
Right, and that's where like her business savvy comes in. The article says Kai is all about bringing high fashion to like a wider audience, making those exclusive designs a little more accessible.
Which makes total sense considering her massive following and influence. It's like she's bridging the gap between those like rarefied runways and like what people are actually wearing.
Exactly. And her design inspiration comes from everywhere. Pinterest, Instagram, even Tumblr. She's plugged into the digital pulse of fashion.
And it shows in her personal style too, right? Remember King Kylie? That super bold over-the-top look she was rocking a few years ago. The article talks about how she's transitioned to something she calls dark feminine.
You picked up on that too. I found that so interesting. It seems like becoming a mother has really influenced her style. She talks about feeling more confident and wanting to experiment with different sides of her personality.
Yeah, it definitely feels more mature, more intentional. It makes you wonder how much our style reflects where we are in life. Like, are we trying to project an image or are we dressing for ourselves?
That's a great point. And she even talks about learning to be kinder to herself throughout the process of finding her style, especially after her pregnancies.
Which honestly is something so many women can relate to. Those big life changes can really make you reevaluate your relationship with your body and how you want to present yourself to the world.
Absolutely. And then there's the whole beauty evolution. Remember when she like first burst onto the scene? It was all about those Kylie lip kits.
Totally. It feels like a lifetime ago. She was practically patient zero for the influencer beauty boom, wasn't she?
She kind of was. She talks about how different the landscape is now. Back then, there were only a handful of beauty YouTubers. Now it's a whole different ball game. It's evolved so much.
Yeah, it's crazy how fast things change online. And she even mentioned how her 6-year-old daughter is already fascinated by makeup.
Oh, wow. That really hit home for me. It just shows how much the next generation is growing up, immersed in these beauty trends almost from the moment they're born.
It's almost like the digital age has compressed time. Kids are exposed to so much so young. It's hard to even imagine what the long-term impact will be.
It really is. But amidst all that, Kylie's been pretty open about her own journey, even about her decision to get breast augmentation as a teenager.
And I think her perspective on that, now looking back, is really interesting. She doesn't seem to dwell on regrets, but acknowledges how much she's learned.
You're right. She focuses on moving forward, which I think speaks to a certain level of maturity. And that maturity seems to extend to how she's approaching motherhood and social media, too.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
She's chosen to be much more private, especially about her kids. It's like she's consciously trying to give them a different experience than what she had.
Which makes total sense. She knows firsthand what it's like to grow up in the glare of the spotlight, and now she's in a position to try and shield her kids from that.
It's like she's trying to reclaim some of that privacy she never had. She even mentioned wanting to keep them off social media for as long as possible, which I think is a struggle a lot of parents are facing these days.
It's a huge challenge, and honestly, it speaks to a much bigger conversation about the pressures of growing up digital. But we'll get to that a bit later. For now, I think it's fascinating to see how Kylie's trying to create a different kind of childhood for her kids.
Yeah, it really does make you think about like the choices parents have to make in this digital age. It's a whole new world of challenges. And Kylie seems very aware of those challenges. She even talks about taking social media breaks, sometimes like deleting the apps for a whole week. just to unplug.
Oh, wow. I can see why. It's like she's actively resisting the pull of that constant online presence. It's refreshing to hear someone with her level of fame talk about the importance of disconnecting.
Totally. Especially because she makes a really valid point. Like, keeping up with the internet is exhausting. The pace of trends is insane these days. It's hard enough for us regular folks, but
Yeah,
for someone like Kylie, it must feel like a whirlwind.
it has to. But what I find fascinating is that even though she's taking those steps back, she's still a powerhouse in the fashion world. Front row at Couture Week, launching her own lines, collaborating with designers. She's not slowing down.
It's like she's figured out how to make the internet work for her instead of the other way around.
Yeah.
Which, let's be honest, is a total power move.
Yeah. It speaks volumes about her business acumen. She's created this empire while also learning to prioritize her own well-being. It sounds like she's found a balance that works for her, both personally and professionally.
And speaking of personal life, the article also touches on her reunion with Jordan Woods. That was a pretty big deal back in 2019, remember? It played out so publicly.
It did. And I think it's interesting to hear her reflect on that experience now, with a bit more time and distance.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like she's grown from it. She talks about going through a period of like heartbreak and loneliness, but also realizing that sometimes, even in friendships, you need space to evolve.
It's a very mature perspective. And ultimately, it seems like they've both moved on in a positive way.
Time heals all wounds.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered style, beauty, social media, and even a bit of relationship drama. But what about romance? The article mentions Kylie is rumored to be dating Timothée Chalamet.
Ah, yes. There have been photos of them together at a Beyoncé concert and the U.S. Open.
But it sounds like she's keeping this one close to the vest. No official confirmation yet.
Right, and considering how much of her life has played out in the public eye, it's understandable that she'd want to protect this relationship.
She makes a good point in the article about how tough it is to date under a microscope. You're trying to figure things out, make decisions, and everyone has an opinion.
It must be so hard to separate your own feelings from the constant noise of public speculation. It's a good reminder that even with all the fame and fortune, she's still human.
Totally. And it seems like she's navigating it all pretty well. Throughout the entire article, she comes across as grounded, self-aware, and genuinely passionate about what she does.
I agree, that passion shines through, especially when she talks about her work. She has this really cool pre-show ritual she does with her glam team. Before big events like Paris Fashion Week.
Wait, tell me about this. What kind of ritual?
Well, before they head out the door, they all join hands and have this little pep talk, reminding each other to have fun and enjoy the moment.
I love that. It's like a grounding exercise, bringing them back to what really matters amidst all the chaos.
Exactly. They focus on how lucky they are to be doing what they love. It's actually quite inspiring.
It's a good reminder for all of us, really. Sometimes we get so caught up in the hustle that we forget to appreciate the journey.
It's so easy to do, especially in a fast-paced world like fashion. But Kylie's story reminds us to find those moments of joy, those connections that keep us grounded.
So taking a step back, what have we learned about Kylie Jenner today? What's the big takeaway from all this?
I think we've gone beyond the surface level. We've seen a glimpse of the person behind the carefully curated image. It's a reminder that even those who seem to have it all are on their own unique journeys, facing their own set of challenges.
Yeah, it's like we've peeled back the layers of like the Instagram filter and gotten a glimpse of the real Kylie, which honestly is a lot more interesting than just seeing the perfectly posed photos.
Right. And it's a powerful message, especially coming from someone with her platform. It's like she's saying it's okay to step back from that constant performance and define success on your own terms.
Which is something I think a lot of us can relate to, even if we're not dealing with like millions of followers. It's that constant pressure to project a certain image, to keep up with the Joneses, digitally speaking.
Absolutely. Kylie's story reminds us that we all have the power to choose how we engage with the online world. We don't have to be slaves to the algorithm.
Right. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Kylie's world, what stands out to you the most? What's like the one thing you think listeners should take away from her journey?
For me, it's like her resilience and adaptability. She's been in the spotlight her entire life. And she's constantly evolving, redefining herself. She's not afraid to like experiment, to push boundaries, to challenge expectations.
Yeah, and you've done it all with the whole world watching.
Yeah.
Which makes her successes all the more impressive. It makes you wonder what that kind of scrutiny does to a person, especially someone who grew up entirely in the digital age.
That's the big question, isn't it? It's almost impossible for us to fully grasp what that experience is like. To have your entire life documented and dissected online, it has to be a unique kind of pressure.
Right? It really does make you think about how it shapes your sense of self, Where do you draw the line between the public persona and the private individual when those lines are constantly blurred?
It's a question we're all grappling with to some extent, I think. As technology advances and the online world becomes even more intertwined with our lives, it's a conversation we need to keep having.
Yeah, well said. So as we sign off from this deep dive into Kylie Jenner's world, we're left with a sense of admiration for her journey and a whole lot of food for thought about fame influence and the ever-changing landscape of the digital age.
Yeah, it's a reminder that behind those perfectly curated images are real people navigating complex challenges, making tough choices, and ultimately just trying to figure it all out just like the rest of us.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.